Hi, my name is John Lehman. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about managing crop stress with use of peptides. When we think about crop stress, there's a few common ones that might come to mind. Herbicide stress, that time period immediately following herbicide application, or various weather stresses throughout the growing season, too hot, too dry, various abiotic stresses that happen throughout the growing season. Today, we're talking about overcoming, in particular, herbicide stress or gaining back that lost yield potential that the crop loses during a stress event, in particular, a combination of stress events. So, herbicide application followed by some abiotic stress in that first 1 to 2 week period after the application when the plant is overcoming the stress of the herbicide. And then it faces a double challenge, if you will, of an additional abiotic stress of too hot or dry or cold following application. This really puts our yield potential at risk. When the plant comes under this kind of stress, whether herbicide stress or environmental stress, it creates inside of the plant an oxidative stress or an oxidative response called a reactive oxygen species, and it takes the plant out of balance. Its health is a little out of balance, and the antioxidant system inside the plant needs to kick into gear to rebalance the health. We're familiar with antioxidants even in human health. When we're feeling low energy or have a cold or under some stress, we want to take antioxidants to give ourselves a boost and get our health in balance. And the same is true inside of a plant. This antioxidant system has to come into action to balance the health and get the plant back in a growth pattern that it can achieve its growth potential. During this oxidative stress, it induces inside of the plant oxidation of plant cells and can begin to break down certain cell structure inside of the plant during this time period. And we want to get that plant back into good health and overcome this oxidation. During this period of oxidative stress induced by herbicides, the impact is not only on the inside of the plant, but oftentimes we can see it manifest itself on the outside of the plant. Burnt leaves, coloring of leaves like you see in this picture here, or you may notice slowed growth or even stunted growth while it's trying to overcome the stress period, the stress event, and we need to overcome that. So get it back on its growth pattern and back on its way to its yield potential. This is just another way of looking at what we've been trying to explain here, that the plant connected to its plant health is on a growth pattern, but then a stress event, in this case we're demonstrating herbicide stress, happens and the plant is negatively impacted during that time period until it can overcome that stress and get back into its growth pattern toward its total yield potential. So how do we help the plant mitigate the impact or the loss of yield potential from the stress? One of those ways is by applying in-tank mix with your herbicide product called Stimtide. Stimtide is built around the peptide technology that we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and now we'll talk a little more detail about what are peptides, but it helps the plant to overcome the stress more rapidly, get it back into balance and into good health, and back on its growth potential that we can mitigate the loss of yield potential. The use of Stimtide improves stress recovery, making it more rapid so you get back onto a balanced, healthy plant more quickly following the stress event. Stimtide does so by adding antioxidant supply, as well as stimulation of antioxidant biosynthesis inside of the plant and activating antioxidant defense systems that are natural to the plant, bringing that plant back into health more quickly. Stimtide not only contains antioxidants, but a high concentration of peptides. So the question might be, what are peptides? All this talk about peptides. Well, in simple terms, peptides are amino acids, but they are amino acids that have been bound together in a certain sequence, somewhere between 2 and 50 peptides. Now, the plant doesn't actually use free amino acids. The plant will convert them first into peptides. And in the peptide form, they're highly available. That's how the plant uses them. They're ready for use. So when you're using Stimtide, it's immediately available for use to the plant. This is very important. There's no energy spent by the plant to convert them into something. They are ready for use and highly available. Secondly, the peptide is a signaling compound. Think of it this way. A signaling compound is like a lock and key system. Each peptide is a key, and it unlocks a particular pathway or turns on something in the plant, telling it to do something that is helpful to that plant in its growth cycle. So when you're starting with Stimtide, you're actually delivering peptides directly to the plant ready for use. So peptides are the key, and they're the key to turning on certain functions within inside of the plant. And we get certain peptides that we're delivering through Stimtide that really improve the stress response. One of those actions that are turned on is it stimulates root growth, even through foliar application. We'll talk more about each of these in the coming slides. But secondly, it enhances nitrogen assimilation and chlorophyll production, as well as increasing nutrient mobility in the plants. Each of these help improve the crop response to stress. One of the particular peptides that have been identified inside of Stimtide is the LRPP, or the lateral root hair promoting peptide. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, this even happens through foliar application. And this peptide, when it enters the plant, turns on or signals to the plant to develop root growth, in particular lateral root hair growth, which you can see in the pictures here to the right, the increased root growth with application of Stimtide. But this lateral root hair growth allows the plant to respond to take in more nutrient, to have better water utilizing capacity in the soil, to help it be ready to overcome stress event. This picture here is just another example of the lateral root hair promoting peptides in Stimtide at work. This is a couple of tomato plants into a nutrient water solution. The one on right has been treated with peptides contained in Stimtide. And this just is 6 days after application. And you can see clearly the increased root development and growth from the application or the inclusion of Stimtide into the solution. In addition to signaling lateral root hair growth, the other two that we mentioned are really closely linked together. That is nitrogen assimilation and uptake, chlorophyll production, and mobility of nutrients in the plant. Here is just a little data showing the results of some testing demonstrating this. And you can see that we increased the dry matter of the plant, but also the SPAD meter, which is an indication of chlorophyll production in the plant, was significantly increased with the use of Stimtide. In addition, the nitrogen content in the plant is significantly increased. There's actually 7 different enzymes that we have measured that the peptides, which are the keys that turn on inside of the plant, that are directly related into nitrogen and nutrient assimilation inside of the plant. This process really enables the plant to have a healthier nutrient balance and to be better prepared to overcome stress. So we've talked about utilizing Stimtide to help prepare the plant and prepare it to overcome stress more rapidly following a stress event. And we talked about including antioxidant supply and enabling the antioxidant system inside the plant to work more effectively. In addition, we talked about the high concentration of peptides that are signaling the plant to turn on certain functions within the plant that better enable it to overcome stress, root hair development, nitrogen and nutrient assimilation, chlorophyll production, nutrient mobility. All of these help the plant to be prepared and to overcome stress more quickly. But can we actually measure that the plant is under less stress? And the answer to that question is yes. This slide here that you have in front of you now is a great test that was done that demonstrates the plant is actually under less stress. So one of the ways we measure stress in a plant is by the production of malondialdehyde, MDA, in the plants. And when a plant comes under stress, this is a natural response from the plant under oxidative stress as it starts to produce this MDA. The more MDA, the greater the stress the plant is under. And the MDA production actually is what triggers or leads to cell membrane breakdown. So Less MDA, the better, or the less MDA is equivalent to less stress on the plant. So what you're looking at in this chart here is glyphosate applied to soy and glyphosate applied to corn. In both cases, the production of MDA increased significantly over no application of herbicide at all. But what's important here in the second bar there on the left is glyphosate applied with Stimtide. And we can actually see a significant level reduction of MDA within the plant, demonstrating clearly that the plant is under less stress. This also happened with glufosinate, both in corn and soy as well. Is the glufosinate triggered MDA production in the plant, but when applied with Stimtide, there was less MDA or demonstrated less stress on the plant. This is significant to improving, really, that we're actually reducing the stress that the plant is under. Another way in which we measure that the plant is under less stress or has less yield loss is by measuring yield. And so you see here on this slide is just a summary slide of multiple years of multiple test locations on multiple crops. So in the upper left, you have 25 different locations over 4 years on soybeans, where we're averaging a 7.2 bushel increase. All of these were applied with the herbicide, I should mention. And then to the bottom, we're talking about cotton. Again, 140.4 pounds. That's 11 different trials over 4 years. And corn, 24 different trials over 4 years, averaging 8.1 bushel. So this is, of course, what we're after, is mitigating the effects of the stress, enabling the crop to achieve more of its yield potential. So in summary, use Stimtide to mitigate herbicide stress, help improve herbicide stress recovery or abiotic stress recovery, improves plant strength and fitness, and actually helps prime the plant for future stresses. It's an easy application, most often applied with the herbicide or fungicide, can be applied multiple times throughout the growing season. It's highly compatible, very easy to use. Use Stimtide. Use Stimtide and stress less. If you would like more information on today's presentation or more information about Stimtide in general, please contact your local representative, or you can send us an email at the address there below. So we look forward to helping you and answering your questions. Have a great season.